After that night, I became pregnant by you, the Apache woman said. Then be my wife. The sun was just beginning to dip behind the rolling hills when John leaned against the wooden fence of his ranch, wiping sweat from his brow. It had been a long day under the blazing sun, tending to the cattle and repairing the fences that the storms had damaged. His hands were rough, calloused from years of hard work, but he didn't mind. This ranch was more than just land. It was his life, his heritage. Yet today, there was an unusual weight in the air, as if something unexpected was about to happen. From the corner of his eye, he noticed a figure walking along the dusty path leading to his property. It was a woman he hadn't seen before. She moved with a quiet confidence, each step careful yet purposeful, as if she belonged in every place she walked. Her long, dark hair flowed gently in the evening breeze, and her eyes, deep and thoughtful, seemed to carry stories of generations past. John's curiosity was immediate, though he quickly tried to hide it behind a polite nod as she approached the gate. "Good evening," John called out, his voice steady but friendly. "Good evening," she replied, her voice calm, with a hint of warmth that made John pause. Her name was Maria, and she belonged to the nearby Apache community. She had come to speak to him about some issues with the grazing land near the boundary of her family's property. John had heard of her family before, well respected, known for their deep connection to the land and their traditions. But he had never met her personally, and seeing her now, standing there with quiet determination, made something stir inside him that he hadn't expected. They spoke cautiously at first. John explained the layout of his ranch, the paths the cattle often took, and the areas that had been damaged by recent rains. Maria listened attentively, asking questions with genuine interest, and John found himself explaining more than he normally would. There was a subtle rhythm to their conversation, a silent understanding that grew with every word. They talked about the land, yes, but they also shared small stories about their lives, the simple routines that shaped them, the challenges they faced, and the pride they took in their work. As the sky turned shades of pink and orange, a sudden crack of thunder echoed through the hills. Dark clouds rolled in faster than either of them had expected. Rain began to fall, first in gentle drops, then in a heavier, insistent drizzle. John instinctively gestured toward the barn. "You should take shelter," he said, stepping forward. "It's coming down fast." Maria hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Together, they ran the short distance to the barn, slipping inside just as the rain began to pour in thick sheets. The barn smelled of hay and the earth beneath the animals, a comforting, familiar scent to John. He noticed Maria's eyes scanning the space, curious but not uncomfortable. "I didn't expect the storm to come so quickly," Maria said, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. John smiled a little awkwardly. "It's always unpredictable around here. You have to be ready for anything." They stood there in silence for a moment, listening to the rain pounding against the wooden roof. It was peaceful in a strange way. The storm created a bubble of stillness around them, separating them from the rest of the world. John realized he was aware of her presence more than he had expected. There was something about her calm demeanor, the quiet strength in her posture that drew him in. Maria spoke again, softly this time. "It's beautiful even with all this rain, makes the world feel different." John glanced at her, seeing the reflection of the dim light in her eyes. "It does. Makes you appreciate the little things, doesn't it?" For the first time, they both let their guard down. The conversation shifted from polite words to something more personal. They talked about their families, the land, and the traditions they each respected. John shared stories of his childhood on the ranch, the long days learning from his father, and the quiet nights under the stars, where the world seemed larger than it really was. Maria spoke of her upbringing in the Apache community, the lessons she had learned from her elders, and the deep connection she felt to her people and the land they had protected for generations. Hours passed like minutes. The rain showed no sign of stopping, and neither seemed to notice the time slipping away. There was a natural ease between them, a sense that they could speak freely without judgment. John found himself laughing at her small jokes, genuinely amused in a way that surprised him. Maria's eyes crinkled with laughter, and for a moment the storm outside didn't matter at all. As the night deepened, the barn became colder. John noticed Maria shivering slightly and instinctively offered her his jacket. She accepted it, and he felt a strange warmth in the simple gesture, a connection that went beyond words. "I've never met anyone like you," John admitted quietly, almost to himself. Maria looked at him, her gaze steady and unflinching. "Neither have I," she said. There was no teasing in her voice, no playfulness, just honesty. It was a rare moment of truth that hung in the air between them. The storm outside began to slow, the heavy rain turning to a soft drizzle. The sound of the water dripping from the roof created a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. John realized that despite the unexpected circumstances, he didn't want this night to end. There was something about Maria, her presence, her voice, her spirit, that made him feel alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. "Do you want some coffee?" John asked, breaking the comfortable silence. "We can sit by the fire for a while." Maria nodded, and they moved toward the small kitchen attached to the barn. As John prepared the coffee, he couldn't help but steal glances at her. There was a gentle elegance in the way she moved, a quiet confidence that didn't demand attention but naturally drew it. They sat together by the small wood stove, the warmth of the fire and the coffee filling the space with comfort. They talked late into the night, sharing stories, hopes, and fears. John found himself opening up in ways he rarely did. Maria listened without interruption, her presence reassuring, her eyes attentive. There was an intimacy forming, subtle but undeniable, built on trust and mutual respect. When the clock finally struck midnight, the rain had stopped completely. Outside, the world was quiet and fresh, the storm having washed the dust and heat away. John walked Maria to her car, standing close for a moment before she got in. "Thank you," she said softly, her hand brushing against his, "for everything tonight. It meant a lot." John nodded, words failing him. There was a heaviness in his chest, a mixture of longing and uncertainty, but he knew he would remember this night forever. As she drove away, he watched the tail lights disappear into the dark road. The ranch felt emptier somehow, yet fuller at the same time, as if her presence had left a mark he couldn't erase. That night John lay awake in his small room above the barn, thinking about her, about the storm, and about the strange, undeniable connection that had formed in those hours. He didn't know what the future held, but he felt, for the first time in a long while, that something important had begun. Little did he know, that night was just the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. Weeks passed after that stormy night, and John could not get Maria out of his mind. Every time he walked through the fields or repaired a fence, he found himself thinking about her laugh, her calm voice, and the way her eyes seemed to see right through him. He had told himself it was just curiosity at first, but slowly he realized it was something much deeper, something he had never felt before. One morning, as he fed the cattle, a car pulled up along the dusty path to his ranch. He wiped his hands on his jeans and squinted toward the vehicle. It was Maria. She stepped out, carrying a small bag and wearing a calm, determined expression. The warm sunlight highlighted her features, and John's heart skipped a beat, just like it had that stormy night. "Good morning, John," she said, her voice steady but gentle. "Maria," he replied, trying to keep his voice casual. "What brings you here today?" She hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. "I need to talk to you about something important." Her words were careful, but there was a weight in them that made John's stomach tighten. He nodded and gestured for her to sit on the bench near the barn. As she sat down, John could feel a shift in the air. There was a seriousness in her gaze that he hadn't seen before. She looked at him with honesty and courage, qualities that he had admired since the first moment they met. "John," she began, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "That night, the night of the storm," she paused as if collecting her thoughts. "I became pregnant." John froze. The words hit him like a sudden gust of wind. He blinked, unsure of how to respond. The ground beneath him felt heavier, and his mind raced with thoughts and questions. For a moment, he could only stare at her, trying to understand the reality of what she had just said. "You're pregnant," he finally managed to ask, his voice low and steady though his heart was pounding. Maria nodded. "Yes, and I came to tell you because I believe you should know. I want you to be part of this, part of our child's life. I want you to be the father, John." He ran a hand through his hair, trying to process everything. The news was overwhelming. A child was coming into their lives, a life that neither of them had planned but that now existed because of that single night. He felt a mix of emotions, shock, fear, responsibility, and a surprising warmth that spread through his chest. I don't know what to say," he admitted honestly. "This is a lot to take in. I never expected," he trailed off, unsure of how to continue. Maria smiled softly, a small, brave smile that carried both hope and patience. "I didn't expect it either, John, but it's true. And I hope you can accept it. I want you to be part of our family. I want you to be my husband." John's heart raced. Husband. The word felt heavy, full of meaning, and at the same time it felt right. But he also knew it was a life-changing decision, one that would affect not only him but their families and community. I want to," he said finally, his voice shaking slightly. "I do want to be part of this, but it's not just about me. We need to think about what's best for you, for the baby." Maria reached out and gently placed her hand over his. The touch was reassuring, grounding him in the moment. "John, I've thought about this. I don't want to hide it. I don't want to face this alone. I want us to face it together." The sincerity in her eyes, the courage in her words, moved him. He realized that this was not just a request. It was a choice she had made with strength and love. And he knew, deep down, that he wanted to meet her courage with his own. Over the next few days, they began to plan how to approach their families. John's parents were surprised when he told them about the pregnancy, but they saw the honesty and commitment in his eyes. They had always trusted him to make the right decisions, and despite the initial shock, they offered their support. Maria, too, faced her own challenges. In her community, the news of an unexpected pregnancy carried weight, and she had to navigate her family's concerns with grace. Yet, she remained calm, knowing that honesty and courage were her guiding principles. She shared her hopes with her parents, explaining that John was willing to take responsibility and that they both wanted to create a loving environment for the child. As days turned into weeks, John and Maria found themselves spending more time together, not just as neighbors or acquaintances, but as partners preparing for a new life. They walked through the fields together, discussing the future and imagining the moments they would share as a family. There were quiet mornings when they sat by the river, listening to the water flow, and evenings when they watched the sun set behind the hills, feeling a sense of calm and unity. John began to understand that responsibility and love were intertwined. He learned to listen more carefully, to observe the small signs of Maria's needs, and to support her in ways he had never considered before. Maria, in turn, felt reassured by John's presence, his willingness to step up, and the quiet strength he showed in facing this unexpected turn in their lives. One afternoon, as they prepared the barn for the coming months, Maria looked at John and smiled. "You know," she said softly, "I was afraid at first. I didn't know if you would accept this, if you would run away, but you stayed, and I'm grateful." John smiled back, feeling a warmth in his chest he had never known before. "I couldn't run away. This is important. And I want to do what's right." Their days became a routine of shared work, preparation, and quiet moments of connection. John learned to help with small household tasks. Maria shared stories of her childhood, and together they began to imagine the world their child would grow up in. The idea of family, which once felt distant and abstract, now became tangible and real. Yet, despite the growing bond and their careful planning, there was still an undercurrent of uncertainty. Both knew that life would not always be easy, that challenges would arise, and that the path they were choosing required courage and commitment. But each time they looked at each other, they found reassurance and strength. They knew they could face the future together. One evening, as the sky turned golden and the air carried the scent of fresh rain from earlier in the day, Maria and John sat by the fire outside the barn. The baby's presence, though still unseen, was already shaping their lives, guiding their choices and deepening their connection. "I feel different," John admitted, staring into the fire. "Like my life has a new purpose. I never imagined it would feel like this." Maria reached over and took his hand, her touch gentle and grounding. "That's love, John. It's not always easy, but it's real, and we have to trust it." He nodded, squeezing her hand in return. "I do trust it, and I trust us." As the night grew darker and the stars began to twinkle above, they sat together in a quiet understanding. The world around them was vast and unpredictable, but for the first time they felt anchored, not just by responsibility, but by choice, commitment, and the growing love between them. That night marked a turning point. The news of the pregnancy had initially brought fear and uncertainty, but it also opened the door to a future neither of them had imagined. They were no longer just neighbors or friends caught in a storm. They were partners, ready to face life together, ready to embrace the joys and challenges of creating a family. And though neither of them knew exactly what the future held, one thing was certain. Their lives had changed forever, and they were ready to face it side by side. John and Maria knew that their next challenge would not only be their own fears, but also the opinions of those around them. While they had each other's trust and commitment, they understood that families, traditions, and the small town's tight-knit community could complicate matters. They decided that honesty and courage would guide their next steps, knowing that hiding or avoiding the situation would only make things harder in the long run. Early one morning, John drove Maria to his parents' home. The sun had just risen, casting a warm golden light over the hills and fields. The farm smelled of fresh hay and earth, the familiar scents that John had always loved. He could feel Maria's hand tighten slightly in his, and he offered her a reassuring smile. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. Maria nodded. "Yes, let's do this together." Inside, his parents were busy with their morning routines. His mother was arranging fresh flowers in the kitchen, and his father was tending to a small repair in the living room. Both paused when John and Maria entered. There was a brief silence, the kind that carries the weight of unspoken thoughts. "Mom, Dad, this is Maria," John began, trying to keep his voice steady. We need to talk about something important." Maria spoke next, her voice calm but firm. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, I came to tell you the truth. I'm pregnant and John is the father. I want him to be part of my life and our child's life. I hope you can understand and accept this." His mother's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and concern flickering across her face. His father remained silent for a moment, his hands resting on the workbench, thoughtful. John could feel the tension in the room, but he also felt a sense of pride in Maria's courage. "This is unexpected," his mother finally said. Her voice was gentle but serious. "But we see that you are honest and brave, Maria. That means a lot. John, is this true?" John nodded. "Yes, Mom, I want to be responsible. I want to support Maria and our child. I know it won't be easy, but I'm ready to face it." The room was quiet for a moment. Then his mother smiled softly. "If you are both committed, we will support you. Families are built on love and respect, and it's clear that you care about each other." His father finally spoke, his deep voice steady. "Life brings unexpected challenges. What matters is how we handle them. I trust you, John, and I trust you, Maria." John felt a wave of relief wash over him. The acceptance of his parents was more than he had hoped for, and it strengthened his resolve. Maria smiled at him, her hand finding his again. They were not alone in this journey. The next step was Maria's family, and John knew it might be more complicated. Her community held strong traditions, and unexpected pregnancies were often met with concern. He understood that Maria's parents would want reassurance that their daughter would be cared for and respected. They drove together to the Apache community where Maria's parents were waiting. The small house was surrounded by open fields and the gentle sounds of nature. As they approached, Maria's father stepped forward first, his expression guarded but curious. "Maria," he said quietly. "We heard you wanted to speak to us." Maria took a deep breath. "Father, Mother, I have something important to tell you. I am pregnant. John is the father. I want him to be part of our child's life, and I want him to be my husband. I hope you can accept that." Her mother's eyes softened immediately, and her father's expression remained serious but attentive. There was a moment of silence as they absorbed the news. John stepped forward, speaking with sincerity. "Sir, ma'am, I want to take full responsibility for this. I will support Maria and our child in every way. I respect your family and your traditions. I promise to honor them while doing my best to be a good husband and father." Maria's father studied him closely, weighing his words, his tone, and the honesty in his eyes. Finally, he nodded slowly. "It will not be easy," he said, "but if you are sincere and committed, we will trust your actions, not just your words. Maria, you have shown strength and courage. John, we hope you can match that with your actions." John felt a sense of pride and determination. "I will, I promise." Her mother added, "This child will bring both of our families together. If you both work hard and stay honest, you will succeed." That evening, as they left Maria's home, John and Maria walked quietly along the dirt road. The sun had begun to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. They didn't need to speak much. The bond they shared had grown stronger through the acceptance of their families. "I was so worried," Maria said softly, her hand brushing against John's arm. "I didn't know how they would react." John looked at her and smiled. "You were brave, and it mattered. We've taken the first step together." The following days were a mix of preparation, planning, and quiet reflection. John and Maria began to imagine their life as a family, discussing everything from the baby's room to the traditions they would honor. They visited the local market together, picking out small items for the child, laughing at the little things that felt new and exciting. John learned more about Maria's culture and traditions, understanding how important it was to blend respect for her heritage with the life they were creating together. Maria, in turn, admired John's willingness to learn, his openness, and his quiet strength. Each day, they discovered new ways to support each other, to understand each other, and to build a partnership grounded in love and respect. Evenings were spent under the stars, sitting by a small fire outside the barn. The gentle warmth of the flames, the soft rustle of leaves, and the distant sound of animals created a peaceful atmosphere. They talked about their hopes, fears, and dreams for the future. John often found himself staring at Maria, feeling a sense of awe at her courage and resilience. "You know," John said one night, "I never imagined my life would change like this. I thought I knew what my future would be, but now it's full of possibilities I didn't see before." Maria smiled, her hand resting on her growing belly. "It's life, John. It surprises us, challenges us, and sometimes scares us. But it also brings moments of joy and love we couldn't imagine." John nodded, feeling the truth in her words. "I want to face it all with you, Maria. I want to be here for every moment, the good and the challenging." Maria leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling a sense of safety and belonging. "And I want you by my side. Together, we can handle anything." The community around them slowly began to notice the changes. Neighbors who had once only exchanged polite greetings now offered smiles and kind words. Some were curious, others supportive, but John and Maria focused on their own journey, knowing that the bond they were building was stronger than gossip or opinion. As the weeks passed, they prepared for the arrival of their child, arranging spaces in the home, gathering essentials, and learning what they could about parenting. The anticipation brought them closer, and the shared responsibility deepened their connection. John often found himself reflecting on the stormy night that had brought them together. He realized that sometimes life's most unexpected events led to the most meaningful experiences. Maria's courage had inspired him, and his commitment to her had strengthened their partnership. Together, they faced a future full of promise, grounded in love, respect, and shared responsibility. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, John and Maria sat side by side on the porch of the barn, holding hands. The world around them was calm, the fields bathed in the soft glow of twilight. John looked at Maria and smiled. "No matter what comes, we'll face it together," he said softly. Maria nodded, a gentle smile on her lips. "Together, always." And in that moment, under the fading light and the first stars of the evening, they both understood that their journey had only just begun. The challenges ahead were real, but so was the bond they shared. And with courage, honesty, and love, they were ready to face anything that came their way. The days grew warmer as spring approached, and John and Maria found themselves busier than ever. Their mornings started early, with John tending the cattle and repairing fences, while Maria worked on preparing the home for the baby. Despite the long hours, neither of them complained. There was a sense of purpose in every task, a quiet excitement that carried them through each day. Maria had begun arranging a small room for the child, painting the walls soft shades of cream and pastel green. She carefully placed handmade decorations, gifts from friends and neighbors, and a small cradle that she and John had chosen together. Every corner of the room carried love and thoughtfulness, a reflection of the care they planned to give their child. John often found himself pausing in the doorway, watching her work. There was a grace in the way she moved, even as her body changed with the pregnancy. He admired her strength and resilience, and he wanted to do everything he could to support her. He helped wherever he could, moving furniture, assembling cribs, and even learning to cook a few simple meals. Every effort, no matter how small, was met with a grateful smile from Maria, and that smile became his motivation to do more. They also spent time together discussing the baby's future. Names, traditions, and hopes were topics of long conversations, usually around the kitchen table with the evening sun streaming through the windows. John wanted the child to feel connected to both his ranching roots and Maria's cultural heritage. Maria, in turn, wanted their child to grow up surrounded by love, honesty, and a strong sense of family. One afternoon, they decided to take a walk through the nearby fields. The grass was fresh and green after a recent rain, and wildflowers dotted the landscape in bursts of color. The quiet was peaceful, broken only by the distant calls of birds. John took Maria's hand in his, noticing how much her touch had become a source of comfort to him. "I can't believe how quickly everything is moving," Maria said softly. "It feels like yesterday we were telling our families, and now we're preparing for our child." John squeezed her hand gently. "It does feel fast, but I think we've handled everything so well. We've faced challenges together and it's made us stronger," Maria smiled. "I'm glad we're together, John. I couldn't imagine doing this with anyone else." John's chest filled with warmth. "I feel the same way. You've changed my life in ways I didn't even know I needed." As the weeks went by, they encountered small challenges that tested their patience and resilience. There were nights when Maria felt unwell, and John stayed by her side, helping her through the discomfort and reassuring her that everything would be okay. There were times when supplies for the baby were hard to find, and they had to get creative, making do with what they had and trusting that their love and effort would be enough. Despite these challenges, Each obstacle brought them closer together. They learned to communicate better, to anticipate each other's needs, and to support one another in practical ways. John discovered that being present, listening, and offering comfort were as important as any material preparation. Maria realized that trust, honesty, and openness could turn even the hardest moments into shared victories. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink, John and Maria sat outside on the porch of the barn. The air was cool but comfortable, carrying the scent of fresh grass and wildflowers. John watched Maria's profile, the gentle curve of her growing belly, and the soft smile on her lips as she spoke about the future. "You know," John said thoughtfully, "I've been thinking about the day our child is born. I want to be there for every moment, every first smile, every step, everything. I want to make sure they feel loved and safe." Maria reached out and held his hand. "They will, John. Because they already have two parents who care deeply. We're building a life full of love and support. That's what matters most." The weeks passed quickly, and the couple became more accustomed to the new rhythms of life. They visited the local doctor regularly, attended prenatal classes together, and learned about what to expect during the birth. John often asked questions, sometimes feeling nervous, but Maria reassured him with gentle patience. Each visit, each lesson, made them more confident, more prepared, and more connected as a team. Their families continued to offer support as well. John's parents helped with practical advice, teaching him small skills that would be useful for caring for a newborn. Maria's family shared stories and traditions, explaining the values and customs they hoped to pass on to the child. The blending of these worlds, once a potential source of tension, had become a source of strength, showing both John and Maria that love and respect could bridge differences. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep shade of purple, John and Maria walked through the fields hand in hand. They paused near a small stream, the water sparkling in the fading light. John looked at Maria, noticing the calm determination in her eyes, and felt a surge of admiration and love. "Do you ever get scared?" Maria asked softly, breaking the quiet. John thought for a moment. "Sometimes. I think anyone would in our situation. But when I look at you, I feel like we can handle anything together. The fear doesn't disappear, but it becomes manageable because we face it together." Maria smiled, her hand resting on his arm. "I feel the same way. Knowing we're in this together makes everything less frightening." As the due date approached, the couple continued to prepare the home, the barn, and their hearts for the arrival of their child. They spent evenings planning small celebrations, decorating the nursery, and imagining the little life that would soon join them. Each night, they shared quiet moments of reflection, holding hands, talking about hopes, dreams, and the life they wanted to create together. One afternoon, while tending to the garden, John turned to Maria with a playful smile. "We should pick a name soon. It's almost time." Maria laughed softly, her eyes twinkling. "I have a few ideas, but we should decide together. It has to be a name that feels right, that carries our love and hopes." John nodded, realizing how much he valued her opinion, her perspective, and the way she always included him in important decisions. They spent hours discussing names, meanings, and family traditions, laughing at some ideas and agreeing wholeheartedly on others. The simple act of choosing a name became a symbol of their partnership, a small but powerful way to honor the life they were bringing into the world. As the final weeks approached, John and Maria also spent time reflecting on their journey so far. They remembered the stormy night when everything had begun, the fear and uncertainty of Maria's announcement, and the careful steps they had taken to gain their family's support. Every challenge had taught them something valuable about courage, trust, and the strength of love. "I can't wait to meet our child," John said one evening as they sat by the fire in the barn. "I want to hold them, to protect them, and to teach them everything I know." But most of all, I want them to know how much they are loved." Maria rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth and safety of his presence. "They will know, John, because they already feel it even before they are here. And they will grow up surrounded by people who care, who respect each other, and who love them deeply." The night grew darker, but the light of their shared commitment shone brightly. They knew that the arrival of their child would bring new challenges, but they were ready. Every obstacle they had faced so far had strengthened their bond, prepared them for responsibility, and deepened their love for one another. In those quiet moments, under the stars and the gentle glow of the fire, John and Maria felt a sense of peace. They had built a life filled with hope, preparation, and love. And soon, they would welcome the newest member of their family, a child who would carry the legacy of their courage, their commitment, and the bond that had brought them together. And so, with hearts full of anticipation and determination, they faced the final days before the birth with patience, love, and the unwavering belief that together, they could handle anything. The morning air was crisp and quiet as John woke before sunrise. There was a nervous excitement in his chest that he could not shake. Today was the day. Maria's contractions had started during the night, and the long-awaited moment of welcoming their child had finally arrived. He quickly dressed and checked on her, finding Maria calm but glowing with a mixture of anticipation and strength. "Are you ready?" John asked gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Maria smiled through the discomfort. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Let's bring our baby into the world." John helped Maria into the car, keeping a steady hand on her back as they drove the short distance to the hospital. The early morning sun reflected off the wet road from the light rain the night before, creating a soft shimmer that seemed to mark a new beginning. John's heart raced, a mix of anxiety and excitement, as he held her hand tightly through every bump and turn along the road. Inside the hospital, the staff greeted them with warm smiles and quick efficiency. The nurses guided Maria through the process, explaining each step while John stayed by her side, offering support, comfort, and encouragement. He whispered words of reassurance, telling her how strong she was and how much he admired her courage. Maria leaned on him when she needed to, drawing strength from the steady presence of the man she trusted and loved. Hours passed in a blur of contractions, breaths, and careful guidance from the medical team. John never left her side, holding her hand, rubbing her back, and speaking softly to keep her focused and calm. He could see the determination in her eyes, the quiet bravery that had drawn him to her from the very beginning. And as the moments grew longer and the intensity increased, he realized that every challenge they had faced together, the stormy night, the difficult conversations with their families, the preparations for this new life, had prepared them for this exact moment. Finally, after a long and exhausting labor, the cries of a newborn filled the room. John's heart leapt into his throat as he saw the small, fragile being held gently by the nurse. Maria's eyes filled with tears of relief and joy, and John felt his own eyes grow wet as he looked at the child for the first time. "It's a boy," the nurse announced softly. "He's healthy and strong." John reached out carefully, feeling the tiny weight of their son in his hands. The sensation was overwhelming, fragile, precious, and miraculous. He looked at Maria, who was smiling through tears, and he felt a surge of gratitude and love that words could never capture. "He's perfect," Maria whispered, her voice full of awe. "He's ours." John nodded, gently placing a kiss on her forehead. "He's everything, Maria, and we're going to give him the best life we can." The hours after the birth were filled with quiet wonder. John and Maria took turns holding the baby, marveling at every tiny finger and toe, every yawn and movement. They shared soft laughter and whispered dreams, imagining the life they would build together as a family. The exhaustion of the night and labor faded in the glow of their love and the joy of their new child. Once they returned home, the couple focused on creating a comfortable and loving environment for their son. The small room they had prepared was now filled with the sounds of soft cries, gentle lullabies, and the warmth of two parents who were learning to navigate the delicate balance of care, attention, and patience. John took to changing diapers, preparing bottles, and learning the subtle cues that their baby offered. Maria guided him with gentle patience, teaching him the rhythms and small tasks of parenthood. Their families continued to support them. John's parents brought meals, offered advice, and celebrated each small milestone with joy. Maria's parents shared stories of their culture, singing lullabies from their heritage and teaching them values and lessons they hoped to pass on to their grandchild. The blending of traditions created a rich, loving environment for the child, a home filled with warmth, respect, and connection. Amidst the everyday rhythms of caring for a newborn, John and Maria also began planning their wedding. They wanted the ceremony to honor both families and their traditions, a celebration of love, unity, and the life they had built together. Invitations were sent, preparations were made, and the anticipation of the day added a new layer of excitement to their lives. The wedding day arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze, the air filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the soft sounds of music. Friends, neighbors, and family gathered, sharing in the joy of the couple's union. Maria looked radiant in her simple but elegant dress, her eyes shining with happiness. John, in his suit, felt a swell of pride and love as he watched her walk down the aisle toward him. As they exchanged vows promising to support, love, and care for each other, John felt the weight of all the moments that had led to this day. The stormy night, the challenges, the preparations, and the birth of their son. Every struggle had been worth it. Every difficult conversation, every moment of uncertainty had led them here, to this perfect moment of unity and commitment. The ceremony was a blend of traditions, honoring both the ranching heritage of John's family and the Apache customs of Maria's community. There were blessings, songs, and the warmth of family surrounding them, creating a tapestry of love, respect, and shared history. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, a cheer went up from the gathered crowd, and John and Maria shared a long, tender kiss, sealing the promise they had made to each other and their child. The celebration continued into the evening, with laughter, music, and stories shared by family and friends. John and Maria danced together, their son resting safely nearby, feeling the joy and love radiating around him. It was a day of happiness, reflection, and the realization that life, in all its unexpected twists, could bring the greatest gifts when met with courage, honesty, and love. In the quiet moments after the celebration, John and Maria sat together on the porch of the barn, holding their son between them. The stars sparkled above, and the gentle sounds of the night created a peaceful backdrop. They reflected on their journey, from the stormy night that had started it all to the birth of their child, to the vows they had just exchanged. "I can't believe how far we've come," Maria said softly, resting her head on John's shoulder. John kissed the top of her hair, his eyes fixed on their son. "Neither can I, but I know one thing: whatever comes next, we'll face it together. We've already proven that we can handle anything as a family." Maria smiled, feeling the truth in his words. Together. Always together. And in that moment, under the wide expanse of the night sky, with their child in their arms and the warmth of family and love surrounding them, John and Maria understood the depth of their journey. Life had brought them together in unexpected ways, challenged them, and rewarded them with a love and family they had never imagined. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and challenge, and they had emerged stronger, closer, and more united than ever. Their son was the living symbol of their courage, commitment, and love, a new beginning that carried the promise of hope, happiness, and a life filled with shared dreams. As the night grew quiet, John held Maria's hand tightly, both of them gazing at their son, imagining the future that awaited them. The challenges of the past were behind them, and the joys of the present and future stretched out before them like the vast fields of their ranch. They had learned that love, trust, and courage could overcome any obstacle, and that family, in all its forms, was worth every effort. And so, with hearts full of gratitude, hope, and happiness, John and Maria embraced the life they had built, ready to face every day together as a husband, a wife, and a parent. They had started as two people brought together by chance, and now they were a family bound by love, strengthened by challenge, and ready to write the next chapter of their extraordinary story.